It's very chill right now.
Oh, sweet. That's cool. What was the project? We're live, by the way. Oh no!
Sick.
Oh, oh. What's the project that you just finished?
Confluence has like a gazillion background jobs that happen on any given day, and so we kind of need to be able to manage those.
Okay.
And we also wanted to surface like for all of our different microservices, just like how they're doing at a glance type thing. So we built like a custom dashboard for that.
Okay, that's super cool. What do they use for background services? Like what kicks them off and what are they running?
Like these are like not cron jobs, but like on demand background tasks. Like if a user wants to export their space or turn something into a PDF or something.
Oh, okay. Oh, cool.
Like
So
that's like a background
actions.
task.
Yeah. Gotcha.
Yeah, but they also have things that run on schedules and everything, so we wanted to manage them all.
Yeah. That's a fun like teaching point also of the fact that not everything is synchronous from a user experience perspective. Like some things take too long. Like we will let you know, and you see that, like we'll let you know when the thing is ready, or it's like download a video and it's processing it, and then all of a sudden it starts to actually download because it was doing the stuff asynchronously behind the scenes first. So,
but like this whole project showed me the scale of Confluence. It's unbelievable. Like millions of background tasks a day. Millions.
Isn't that wild?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, and Confluence as a whole is so big. Like there's so many things, like so many sub products, right?
For Confluence? even within Confluence, there's a bunch of like little add-ons and things like that.
Yep. It escalates really quickly. Neil, what's going on YouTube? S Chassis
coming in with a banger question.
So do you think HTMX is just hype or worth learning? So first of all, I have to learn what it is. So Brad, maybe you can explain it.
I have not dove into HTMX at all.
And is it worth learning for someone with no Python experience? All right, behind the scenes.
I didn't realize HTMX had a place in the Python ecosystem as well.
Well, that's kind of what I was wondering. So what's the relationship there, Chassis, with Python in this case? I was wondering if what they were saying is HTMX is very similar to how people, well, actually I'm thinking PHP, how people would use PHP templates with WordPress. But I guess I was thinking PHP, not Python.
I mean, so maybe it's framework and language agnostic. Maybe it's just like a templating language or something. I don't even know what it is.
So I've got actually we could do this. Like we're streaming today. Let me move. We're streaming today and doing like super casual, just hang out, chat. And this is a perfect opportunity to just share screens and stuff. So let me get my thing set.
It just says high-powered tools for HTML. So it sounds like you can use it anywhere. But okay. And there's a script with it as well. So you have your server send back HTMX, I guess, or something, and then you pull in the script. Here you can see it's coming from unpackage, and I guess it just adds additional functionality to HTML elements with these HX attributes that does stuff. I mean, so this is the same with any other front end framework, React, Vue, whatnot. It's just a way to give your markup more interactivity.
Superpowers. There's a couple interesting things too. It talks about like the size. So gzip being super small, dependency free, which is interesting. That's one of, I feel like it's not a super realistic complaint, but it is a complaint sometimes of like how many dependencies you have with certain frameworks.
But how do they say it's dependency free? I mean, you're pulling in a script.
Well, I guess it doesn't have any dependencies. Like all the code for it is like in that script, I guess.
Yeah.
And then also it talks about WebSockets and server sent events, which is interesting. I wonder like what that layers on top of just what you would have with creating like a socket connection yourself. But then also where does the server piece come in? Because server sent events and socket connections only work if you actually have a server, right? So like if this is a front end thing, where does the actual server aspect of the socket stuff come from?
I mean, maybe it's the client bit where, instead of like bringing up your own socket.io instance or setting up your own listener for service end events, maybe the HTMX script does that out of the box.
Yeah.
And then, some attributes are just like hx dash on service end event or something. You know what I mean? Like maybe it's just there.
Super interesting. It's funny, like the ecosystem is overwhelming. Like all the jokes about tools and too many tools and frameworks and stuff is 100% true. Maybe not to the point where it's too much, although I think that is like fairly pretty common opinion. But it is way too many things to be knowledgeable in everything. Even for someone like me, like I'm not super hyper focused on anything because I don't write production level software with one technology 40 hours a week. I have ability to like experiment with stuff and look at different things. And this is one that I like. I think I've just seen HTMX reference and have no idea what it is. But Chassis said they saw there was a demo that was ridiculous. So do you have a link to the demo? Do you have any like context for what the demo was or anything? And then Christian also said that HTMX is super interesting. So I'm curious, Christian, what in particular do you find interesting about it? Like what are the potential use cases that you see?
I wonder if it does like data binding, because I feel like half of what React does is their like diffing and data binding with the VDOM and everything. And so if HTMX just kind of doesn't do that and it essentially just adds helper methods, its attributes to make life easier, then yeah, it can totally like drop all of the DOM diffing and everything and make it pretty simple, pretty small.
Yeah. There's another package, I forget what it is, that I wanted to look at, minimal JavaScript data binding, that I thought was interesting. Yeah. It's basically like almost as close to vanilla JavaScript, but then gives you like data binding. Like that's kind of all it did. And I can't remember what it was. Does anyone know what that is? Again, there's a million. This is probably.
Is it kind of like observable?
It wasn't observable specifically. Yes, on Twitch. Welcome, by the way. HTMX equals view svelte. You tell us. Like we're just kind of looking at it for the first time, honestly. So if you have any idea, any opinions or ideas of like what HTMX is used for, feel free to jump in. I cannot find. I don't think I had the most like searchable thing for this. I can't remember at all what it was, but it was like a very minimal JavaScript framework, and it gave you data binding, like kind of the things like I was kind of thinking for vanilla JavaScript demos that I would do on YouTube, like I could use that and get some of the benefit of React without having to go all the way React.
Yeah. And for the most part, like, okay, when do you use data binding? You use data binding primarily for, let's say, like forms, but like, you don't have to do forms that way, right? Like, so, inputs just work without having an on-change handler. And this whole remix thing has really like blown my mind. Just like, you just put the input there and everything just actually works.
Well, and it's great. So I think it was either Alex Trost or it was Jason. I think it was Jason Langsdorff on TikTok talked about this. And we've kind of gotten so used to the React pattern with use state of like for each input, we have use state for each one. We track it. And then in the submit, we grab each of those inputs. And we also have to do the updating piece where we set value and then we update it. But then in the form submission, you could literally just grab the form and grab the form data from it and have that to be able to get individual properties if you want and never have to track state.
Yeah.
And I guess some of that use case, and this is where Remix does things differently too. Some of that potential use case is being able to track those elements on changes to be able to do validation.
Yep.
But also you could get that from like the on change handler comes with the actual input. So you could get the value there directly as well. But it would save you this whole song and dance of using use state if you're just using it to submit a form, because you can just grab it from the actual form that comes in the event of the form submission.
Okay, so get this. I pitched a Remix app at work, like for this app that I was just telling you about. I was like, we should use Remix. And I convinced everybody to use Remix plus Tailwind plus our Atlassian design system. And it's been pretty crazy to see people adjust to the Remix style of writing React. And they're like, where's all of our use state? Where's all of our context? Where's all of our use effects? And I'm like,
you're like, well,
you don't need it. It all happens on the server. It's kind of magic.
Yeah.
But like for big companies, they like to feel good about doing things the old way, essentially.
Yeah.
Remix doesn't stop you from just writing client rendered, client side React. You can do whatever you want as soon as your page loads. So you kind of get the best of both worlds, where we were making some client side requests to like dynamically load in some more data, but you still got server rendering out of the box. Could you imagine if you started with like a regular client side rendered React app and then said,
try to go,
oh, now we have to render on the server?
Yeah.
You know, that's way harder to go that way.
Yeah, I think that's one of the beauties of things like Remix is it has the flexibility to do both. It has opinions also of what they think is the best way to do it, but it also has the flexibility to blend the two and kind of pick and choose. And that's always been, I think, the hype, or not the hype in a bad way, like the legitimate benefit of frameworks that do framework stuff well is still giving you power to pick and choose when and how.
And I like it because they don't have to add so many layers on top of the web platform in order to achieve that, where like, you know, in contrast, this is where Next.js is starting to feel like a little bit you're locked into this box, whatever that is. If you want their ISR and stale while revalidate and you know, all this crazy stuff, you kind of have to just buy into Vercel's vision of Next plus
of the future
plus React. Yeah.
Several good comments, by the way. So let's walk through these. And again, we're hanging out and chatting. Do you think should we actually like kick off and do like the formal intro and then just continue what we're doing?
Let's do that. And then
podcast version.
And also like open it to questions too. Yeah. I think that would be fun.
Absolutely. So yeah, question if it like, and there are a few already there. So we'll just knock those out. Throw in any questions that you have, to be honest, and we'll just kind of run through this. Really quickly, I do this every week, and I'm actually wearing that conference shirt from Wisconsin, but that conference, Austin is coming up in January, and they are my coffee sponsor. So it's actually kind of sick. That conference like makes their own, they work with local roasters and makes their own coffee. So I drink like that conference coffee basically every day, and it's delicious. So people should check that out. Also check out that conference. It's one of my favorites. It's in Austin in January. So Brad will be there. I will be there. And one thing I haven't told you, Brad, is I'm planning a virtual mini conference within that conference. So we'll leverage the main stage to do things like podcast episodes. And this is me telling you, you're going to be involved. So expect that. And then also it's just a way for other people outside of the in-person venue to be connected and kind of get value out of the stuff that's there as well. So
and I don't know if I told you, but I submitted 3 talks.
Yes.
So we'll see if they go through.
Sweet. Love it. Very cool. All right. I'll go ahead and kick it off. We can come back to any and all of those things. I see a couple of questions already in the chat. We'll come back to them. We'll do an official intro if I figure out where the actual like music is, and then we'll just kind of run through and talk about whatever. What's up, everyone? Welcome to another episode of Compressed FM, a podcast all about web development and design with a little bit of zest. In this episode, we're doing an open conversation Q&A, just hanging out and chatting. So hope you enjoy it.
Web development and design, who would have guessed? Well, we can do them both, even add a little zest. So turn up the volume, get ready for the best. Let's get it started in this episode of Compressed.
What's up, everyone? My name is James Huquick, and I am a developer experience consultant and a content creator. I'm coming up with a new thing every week because I still can't settle on a title for myself. But anyway, I'm James Huquick.
Hey, y'all. I'm Brad Garapi. I'm a front-end developer at Atlassian, and I work on Confluence.
Sweet. So Brad and I are just hanging out today. We are having conversations. We've already started to talk a little bit about Remix and Next and something called HTMX that we know basically nothing about. So if you're listening to the podcast after the fact, tag us on Twitter and tell us what it is, why you love it, etc. But we've got questions coming in live, so we'll just kind of talk through these and just hang out casually for an hour. So there was one that I wanted to call out. Someone called out my YouTube channel and said for the first time they had free codecamp algorithms, and I gave good solutions. I think I'm understanding that correctly. Hopefully that's true. We've been doing this, and you've come in for 1 or 2 of these kind of data structures and algorithms. I'm tweaking this to be live leak code in Discord every Thursday, which I find fun because I think they're interesting challenges. But
it's a good
ton
name
of teaching
too.
Points. Yeah, I thought it was kind of cool.
Yeah.
Anyway, so we're doing that in the Learn, Build, Teach Discord every Thursday now at 11 a.m. if people are interested.
Yeah, I actually recently took an interview just to kind of keep my skills sharp. It was with PayPal, and you know, go figure, you got one of those kind of it wasn't like particularly like data structures and algorithms, but it was like, here's a problem that requires some kind of data manipulation, you know, and like modifying some stuff. So it's definitely expected everywhere you go.
Yeah. How did you feel about it? Because you don't have a ton of experience with that. Is that right? Like those types of interviews, or you do have a good experience?
I mean, I've worked at a lot of big companies, so that is typically what they interview you in. But I also like don't study for any of this stuff. Yeah.
Just show up and do it.
I was nervous, you know, but the feedback I got was, you know, 5 stars, all thumbs up, moving me on to the next round type thing. So
wow, that's awesome.
I did well enough.
Yeah, that's really cool. Thinking about being nervous in different scenarios. I posted about riding Peloton a few weeks ago, like a month ago, and got invited to a Peloton podcast. It's an unofficial, it's called Clips Out, I think, podcast.
Okay.
And so like I ended up tying in a bunch of like my professional stuff and things that I talk about on a regular basis. But it was a lot of questions about like, why do you use Peloton? And like, why is fitness important to you? Which is like something I'm excited about, but also not the thing that I like talk about very often. So I was like very uncomfortably like hot and sweaty while I was on this podcast, but it ended up being a ton of fun. It was kind of cool to do something different.
It's so weird to do like a non-tech podcast. A buddy of mine in Austin has a podcast, and he invited me on, and it was so like cool. We were in his garage. There was a whole set, like 2 chairs, and like,
oh, that's cool.
Everything was decorated, and we just had like a lot of random conversation.
Yeah, that's fun.
And it's like, how do I not talk about programming for an hour and a half with a mic in front of my face?
I know. Yep. Yeah, it's an interesting challenge for those of us who do this on a regular basis. And also thinking about having a studio, I will be moving at the end of the month, and I'm excited to kind of build out an even better, like more comprehensive studio than what I have now. So I'm excited to get back into that whole thing, which is a very deep rabbit hole.
Yeah, but then, you know, you got to tear everything down in between. It's like such a wreck.
Yeah, it's a mess. So one comment. So we talked about HTMX for a minute, which has a tagline of high power tools for HTML, and disclaimer, like neither Brad or I like know almost anything about it. S Chassis on YouTube said that it also has Tailwind support. They said they don't know much about it either. But Tailwind support is an interesting thing, I guess, out of the box. And then you'll appreciate this, and we kind of touched on this before. Max Programming said, I probably need to try Remix. I'm too much into Next nowadays, which is, I feel like, where a lot of us are. And then Joshua commented or asked, Remix versus Next.js. And I'll kind of start with me. Like, I don't have near the Remix experience that you have. I think part of the answer also is you can get out of either one whatever you want and need for the most part. Like, I also have this video planned in my head of like Remix versus Next versus FeltKit. Which one should you choose? And the answer is like, it doesn't really matter. Like, go and play with them and figure out what resonates with you and your team, especially, and like just see what seems to click and fit. But you can, with these powerful frameworks and the features and functionality they have, you can kind of get the same things out of them, maybe in a slightly different way, but you can still accomplish the same kind of things. But you're a big, like more and more a big Remix fan, right?
Yeah. I think one of the reasons I like Remix the most is that it feels like it doesn't do a whole lot. That's what it feels like. Even if you've ever written just like a regular React app with a React router, that's basically Remix. And they just took that router portion that you would put in your like app.js file, and they made it file-based routing, and then added loaders and actions. Like, the Remix layer is so thin. And so it feels like it's a whole lot less magic to it. But one of the other things I really like about Remix is that you can deploy it anywhere. It's a regular node server. Whereas, you know, we've heard about this before. Next.js, if you want to deploy it to your own AWS, you kind of miss out on some features. Some of that incremental static regeneration stuff that is Vercel's secret sauce behind the scenes. It takes a lot of work to do that on your own. And there was a recent episode of Syntax FM where Brandon came on.
I was just going to call that. Yeah, go ahead.
From Flight Control, and he's like, we had to reverse engineer this whole thing, and it was so difficult. So like, you kind of have to know that if you're picking Next.js, you're also kind of picking Vercel. And there's nothing wrong with that. They provide you a lot of tools. Even just think about all the libraries they've been releasing lately, like their AI library, their React Tweet component, like some really good stuff. But you kind of have to go all in. Whereas Remix, it's really easy to kind of like take the basics and it'll get you really, really, really far. And then you don't really feel like you're super bought into a whole system.
Yeah. Yeah, I've also heard the reverse engineering thing from Netlify as well, of Netlify wanting to provide first-class support for Next.js and them having to reverse engineer some of the things that Vercel was doing. And quick additional shout out to Flight Control. So this is a hosting platform where you use your own AWS account, but they layer on the UI that
deployment
everyone
tools,
wishes,
management tools,
and management tools that everyone wishes Amazon just had or AWS had by default, right? So that one is by Brandon. They also called out the fact that Brandon is a pilot and he flies himself to conferences, which still blows my mind.
Just
and I think it's one of the coolest things in the world.
He also takes like conference attendees up in his plane with him.
Yes.
And like the next time I see him at a conference, I'm going to be shy to ask, but I want to ask, like, take me in your plane. That's so cool.
He like outwardly offered at Render ATL, which is super cool. I would have done it, and I would be scared to do that. And I additionally would be scared when I found out that he also, if you're comfortable with it and say yes, will do like barrel rolls, because he wants to, or is like working towards being a stunt pilot.
Yeah. So like that's the kind of plane he bought. And then I learned that he's been flying since he's like 15 and he got his license like literally the second he could. Like, he's got a lot of experience under his belt and all, but it's just crazy. What a crazy hobby to have, you know?
Yes. But a super cool one.
Super cool.
Everyone that has put in questions, just know I'm paying attention to these. We're kind of working through them, so don't think we've ignored them. And one that I want to get to is from Neil on YouTube asking, do you have any advice for planning projects? I'm a recent bootcamp grad and I'm attempting to build an application, and I'll admit I'm a bit overwhelmed with the process and wish to learn. I'm excited about this, so I'm going to jump in first. I have taught multiple rounds of a bootcamp called Launch Code, and I've worked with tons of other people just individually. When people have like a portfolio project or a capstone project that they're supposed to build, it's one of the hardest things they'll ever do in the process of kind of transitioning into tech, for a few different reasons. When you have homework assignments through bootcamp, for example, you at least have a starting point. Like, they're giving you the details for you to be successful. When you're building something you're on your own, you don't know how to give yourself those details to be successful. And so it's very hard just to get started. The other thing that everyone that I've ever worked with ever in that position has done is start too big. And so they have this idea where they want to build like a real SaaS product. And so some of this is just differentiating. This is portfolio project. This is not SaaS product. It doesn't mean it can't be eventually. Like, keep your goals and keep that in mind. But the really key thing to this, and the thing that helps with preventing getting overwhelmed, is to break things down into very, very small chunks and look at like feature groups at a time. So if you want to build a SaaS platform, build a landing page first. You can do that. Then can you add login with authentication? You can do that individually. Then can you handle image uploads for profiles for users? You can do that individually. Like, breaking those down into accomplishable and understandable chunks makes that process so much easier. If you just look at, I want to build this, and don't have any steps along the way, it's going to be incredibly hard. You will obviously feel overwhelmed, and you're going to really struggle with that. So learning to break those things down into smaller chunks is number one thing that I recommend people do in that situation.
Yeah. Building like SaaS applications is so difficult. I think one of the things you can do is like really know what you want to build and why you want to build it. For instance, my wife gets headaches. We want to track them. And so I started building a headache tracker. And,
wow,
that means you got to have login, you got to have a database and all that kind of stuff. And one of the things I like to do when I'm building applications is I think about how it looks later. You got to get it working. Just put raw HTML on the page, connect everything with JavaScript. And I also think about starting from the data and working out. Meaning, set your kind of database schema first, what that's going to look like, maybe define some TypeScript types, and then build the form that creates those things and hook it all up. That allows you to kind of focus on getting the nuts and bolts actually working before you think about like really making it a product or making it look great or something like that. Just prove to yourself you can make it work first.
Yep, absolutely. As a follow-up to that, if you have specific questions about things that you're doing, if you also want to share progress on what you're doing, feel free to reach out and share with both of us. A great place to do that is the Learn, Build, Teach Discord community as well. So if you're not already there, Neil, I'm not sure if you are, learnbuildteach.com, and you can come and post questions in the help forums and just kind of be a part of the conversation there. So I'd recommend doing that. The next question is from Max Programming. It says, I'm currently struggling with managing job and content creation, fair, plus college. Well, that's a third thing that we don't have to do, Brad and I. That takes up 60% of the time. How do you handle your job and open source / content creation? And I'll let you kick that one off.
I don't have a great answer, mostly because I haven't been doing much of it lately. I got to say, like, there are times and places in life where you want to push, where you want to crank out a lot of stuff and you feel motivated. Take advantage, ride that wave. When it's not the right time, buy a Nintendo Switch and play a bunch of Zelda. Like, you know, but I'll say this. I have still been putting out a little bit of content here and there, a couple tweets. I've been trying to get into a little bit of photography lately.
Oh, that's cool.
Making very short videos. And so I've noticed that I just keep paring it down to smaller, easier things to publish. So I've been making these like 1 to 2 minute videos that I've been putting out on Twitter, where I just, like, if something strikes me and I have an opinion about it, I just record like a 1 to 2 minute video, put it out on Twitter. There's no real editing, no nothing. It's just a way to get out a piece of content and share how I think and feel. And, you know, people learn a little bit more about me in the process. Another way I like to do this too is, like, if I do want to do a larger piece of content, I love writing blog posts instead of doing videos, because they're so much easier to, like, progressively move it from start to finish. You can start with just a title, then go a bullet point list, then kind of flesh that out. It seems, for some reason, like, so much easier to go step by step there, rather than like, I want to make an hour-long tutorial video. And I just have so much trouble, like, breaking that down and segmenting it and then editing it all. Like, just feels too overwhelming for me.
Yeah. Anything that you can do to take away the overwhelmingness by shortening the amount of time it takes to produce the thing. And I've been through this as well. I do content creation full time now, but I spent years doing content and working for companies. And I would go through phases. If you look at my YouTube videos, they're very unproduced and they're very short. And so I have recorded enough videos. Fun fact, this is wild to me. Someone created a YouTube calendar that just kind of shows, like, a calendar of stuff that you published and the amount of minutes and stuff. Apparently I've created more minutes of YouTube content than Mr. Beast on YouTube.
Whoa.
Now, the views that he has is infinitely much more, but the fact that was really crazy to me. But I've talked about this before. Like, I try to keep that process simple. My editing is relatively simple. I try not to overthink things. I try to ship stuff when it's 80-90% done. I don't get to the 100%. That's kind of my personality, but it also enables me to stay consistent. I can find any topic randomly and record something quick in 5 to 10 minutes with very minimal editing and publish something on YouTube. And so you don't have to make hour-long videos. You don't have to make full courses. You can do little nuggets that are very small. You can do them across multiple platforms. So part of the conversation is also reusing. So if you just record a video for YouTube, you could probably pretty quickly record a 60-second thing to publish on YouTube Shorts on that same topic, or Twitter, etc. So you can start to kind of reuse in that way. The other thing that I find really cool that I've been using recently is using AI for this. And so I've been using a product called Video Tap. I thought I had the link. Let me make sure I have it. One sec. Video Tap at videotapit.com. And this is created by a friend of mine. I also have an affiliate link if people are interested. But what it does is I can give it a video. It will generate tags for it that I can copy and paste into YouTube. It can generate descriptions. It can generate overviews of the video. It can also generate a blog post, which I use as a starting point to create blog posts for my videos. It's now adding a feature to do like short clips to post on anywhere that you want. So leveraging tools to do that, I think, is a huge part of it as well. And the last thing is, like, if you just don't have it in you, there's nothing wrong with that. Like, that's also okay. So don't be afraid to say, I'm just not capable right now of doing the amount of things that I was before. That's perfectly fine. And Max, this is a specific person that asked, is a great content creator, has been doing a lot of stuff, is in my Discord, is on Twitter. You do a lot of stuff. So don't feel like there's anything wrong with like taking a step back and not being able to do as much as you used to.
Yeah, and here's the beauty of it. Like, just because you're not continually producing new things, you still have a gigantic backlog of work. It's not like that's going to go away. So like every new thing you publish is just one more notch in your belt.
Here's another thing that like I haven't done a very good job with, but I see this play out a lot. There's also nothing wrong with recreating the same content in an updated version.
Yeah.
And or doing a slightly different take on an existing piece of content. So a lot of times, if you build a 30-minute tutorial, there are nuggets in there that you could spend 5 minutes diving slightly deeper into a shortcut that you used in VS Code or a code snippet that you have or how to set up a given tool or something. So if you want like even easier things than coming up with new topics, it's just like leveraging existing stuff that you already have and expanding on it more, break it out into smaller things. I found this myself as a consumer of content. It's just because someone does something very similar to something I've watched before. Either I may not have seen the previous version, or this one has a slight difference that's still useful enough for me to watch. So don't think you can't like kind of reuse stuff that you've already done as well.
Yeah, I'm like, if my talk gets accepted for that conference, I'm going to make so much content out of it just because like it's going to be there. You know, I'm going to put it everywhere. Little nuggets on Twitter, little bits of YouTube videos, streams, everything.
I haven't done as well of that as I would like to, of just looking across the board at all the things that I do. So in theory, I was supposed to do that with my Astro course, and I just haven't. Like I was going to give talks on it, but I had like 2 keynote things that I didn't feel like should be like technology specific. So I took it a higher level. And anyway, so I haven't done exactly what you're saying, but if you look across the board at all the things you could do and try to focus those on a given topic, it's definitely a win. There's a question from Chassis of, do we do portfolio reviews? I'd like to sign up. I'm happy to do one. I think that would be really fun, actually, for us to do like a portfolio review episode on the podcast. That would be super cool. I also used to do, I can't even remember what it's called, but another good friend of mine, Brian Robinson, we did code and portfolio and resume reviews and had a website for it where people could submit like either links to stuff or their actual resume. And we were creating content out of it. And I feel like that as a TikTok channel would be super successful. I
really cut it down, just hit the highlights. Yeah, true.
I think that would be really valuable. So if you have something you want us to look at, Chassis, send it to us. I think we'd definitely be open to that. All right, here's one for you, Brad. I want to be full stack, which I recommend. And I am studying JavaScript. Where should I go first, React or Node?
I think front end takes longer to master, to be honest. The rabbit hole runs really deep. Whereas back end, I feel like you can pick any of the web servers, you know, Express, Fastify, and just start receiving API requests and sending out responses like relatively quickly. So I feel like I would do a little bit of front end, like some basic HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, understand how that works a little bit, hop over to back end, you know, make a very easy API, like a to-do list, or even just like a is even, you know, like make one API function that's like is even, and they pass in a number and you return true or false. And then you go back to your front end and kind of get deeper into like frameworks and libraries and more advanced client features. But I would really say that, yeah, front end, I think, runs a whole lot deeper. Back end, you get into like infrastructure stuff, and some companies just have teams for that, and you don't even have to worry about it.
It's funny, from a like rabbit hole perspective, I would go completely opposite. And this is also, I think, important of, you ask people the same question, you'll get different responses. So take everybody's advice with a grain of salt and just kind of take their perspective and then make your own decision. I think of going to back end being a bigger rabbit hole from starting with HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, because you're moving to a totally different segment of programming. You're doing totally different things. To your point, you're like looking at infrastructure, you're looking at databases, you're looking at API endpoints, things you may not have been exposed to at all. If you look at going from HTML, CSS, and JavaScript to React, you're still in the front end ecosystem. There are lots of new things there, and there is a lot, definitely, but you're kind of in the same ecosystem and same general idea of what you're trying to accomplish. So my personal take would be to go HTML, CSS, JavaScript, get into React, and then go into taking what you built with React, which is leveraging maybe local storage, or maybe it has no memory at all, and then combine that with a backend. But I mentioned this like when I kind of started that, I recommend that people learn full stack. Not that you have to be a full stack expert, and that you probably wouldn't be. But I think it opens up more opportunities for people, and regardless of which one you may want to focus on, gives you a better understanding of the other. So if you're a front-end developer but has the understanding of how full stack works, you'll be better or more equipped to work with a back-end team and kind of work together. So love that that's on your radar. I think either way that you go, great. Like, you'll be totally fine. There's a couple different perspectives from Brad and I on why either one versus the other, but go do your thing and see how it works, because you'll get different opinions from different people. So,
I think I gave my answer because I was only front end for, I think, too long in my career. And I think it may have been a mistake to just purely say I'm a front end developer. And then I feel like things opened up, at least for like myself and, trying to build SaaS apps and little toy projects and stuff like that, as soon as I learned the back end portion. So that's why, like, from my perspective, kind of come up at the same time, at the same pace in both front and back end. But yeah, like you were saying, everybody's path is different. And I don't know, whatever works. Also, whatever opportunity presents itself to you first. Are you more interested in front end? Then just do that. Are you more interested in back end? Just do that, because there are jobs in both sectors. I think the key is like keeping your motivation as you're learning.
I definitely am a big advocate of, unless you specifically know you're applying for these types of jobs that are specifically looking for these technologies, and if you've done that research and are hyper focused on that to get a job, 100% do that. Otherwise, let your interests and creativity kind of guide you and make it fun. I 100% agree with that. Let's see. Sion on Twitch said, I just published my first blog post on LinkedIn, and it was about documenting a Next.js API with their Swagger integration. That's super cool. Brad, do you know about Next.js? N-E-S-T?
Never used Nest, but from what I hear, it's kind of like, again, same as Express, Fastify type of thing, backend web server.
Yep. Shout out to Corey Weathers, who just joined us in the chat, by the way. What's up, Corey? So Nest.js, the way that I think about it is the backend equivalent for Angular, because all the same paradigms are like exactly the same. Like they break things into services, they use annotations, they have TypeScript by default. It's literally just like the same structure that you have for Angular on the back end. And I've barely used it. I used it on like one small project that I did some work on at work at Authentication, but I actually really like the structure and consistency, because that's one of the potential issues with Express or Fastify or things, is like, you have the ability to kind of create things however you want, which is good. People love that, right? Because, hey, I can use my paradigm, or I can use my whatever. But it also is nice to just have kind of a more set structure in place. And the fact that most things come like either by default with TypeScript, or they're just very easily added. But the fact that Next.js was like one of the first that really just embraced what Angular did of the TypeScript ecosystem and this organization of code. And I think it has the scaffolding commands that Angular has as well. I found really interesting. So those are a couple of reasons why I thought Next.js was super cool. But again, haven't used it a ton myself.
Yeah, I feel like everything now has scaffolding CLI tools, and that is amazing. And I wish they would get more into not just like scaffolding an initial project, but also doing like generation inside of that project. So I'm sure Nest probably has this. I know Angular does. Like, I want to make a new component, or I want to make a new route or something, like help me continue to move my project forward after, the the very first commit.
Yes. So I'm actually curious because you said you feel like so many things have that. I feel the opposite because I feel like Angular and /Nest, I think it does similar scaffolding commands. Why does that not exist more?
Everywhere. Yeah.
It feels like a given. Like, again, if you're in just Express ecosystem, there's a lot of different ways, but they could also just give you base stuff that you could start with. Like, don't use it if you don't want it.
Right.
But why does that not exist more often? Because we do the same thing. It's why I love Ruby on Rails. I don't like Ruby, but I love Ruby on Rails. And this is just lack of experience. Not that I'm talking shit about Ruby. It's just they give you commands to generate all the things. And actually, to your point earlier, where you said start a new project and just use regular HTML, that's what Ruby does. Like, it gives you templates that are associated with API endpoints or like form submissions and database. And then you go and style it. Like, it gives you those core things. Why does that not exist more often? I don't get it.
So probably one of the first things I do in any project after I bring it up is start installing plop, which is a code generator. And then I make, plop generators for specific things. And then I open source those packages. So I've got plop generators for remix routes and things like that. But I saw on one, like the keynote or something, Remix did some presentation where they kind of slyly demoed this tool where you can essentially kind of like generate a model. And so they you have your data model and then it makes loaders and actions for all the CRUD operations that you can do on this model, and it makes the route for it. And I'm like, that should be. That's moving us towards, Ruby on Rails, Laravel, stuff like that.
And Ruby on Rails at this point is so old. I just don't understand why we don't
just do that.
Yes.
Just do that.
It's not, again, if it doesn't fit the way that you want to do the code, fine. Like, it's a command that you'll just never use, but it's not hard to add that command into the CLI. Like, I just don't get why that's not a more common thing. And that's why I get excited about certain frameworks that do offer that. And it's one of the reasons that I haven't used it in a long time, but did like Angular, was for the same exact reason.
Yeah. And it's good because it comes from the first party. It comes from the framework authors. You're like, this is the way they want me to do it. I don't have to rethink how I like it or come up with my own standards. It's like, this is it. This is the way. The Mandalorian, that's what it is.
Oh man. If it was us building stuff.
Yeah.
Speaking of building stuff, got a request to make, this is fun, a video on Astro authentication in Astro. And fun fact, Brad it's perfect that he's here because Brad did the entire demo for the Astro course that I'm working on. But in that Astro course, one of the things that I think is really cool is we take Astro beyond what it's known for. So Astro is, people haven't heard of it. It's a framework that is closely associated with static site generators and really optimized for people that are working with Markdown and doing content websites. But Astro also has server-side rendering capabilities. It has API endpoints. It has all the functionality that you need to build full stack applications. Now, the caveat to that is it doesn't have all the niceties that something like Remix or Next.js or SvelteKit would have, but you can do everything. And so inside of this course, the first half is doing static basic blog that people are it dives into some of the additional features that you probably wouldn't see in a regular, just build a blog with Astro. But then the second part is going full SSR. And Brad and I actually had conversations about how exactly do we do this, but it's full SSR. It has authentication. It has comments that load for blog posts, and you have to be authenticated. You have to be logged in to leave a comment on a blog post. So it actually goes into the full stack capabilities of Astro. And I think I'm really excited about Astro. If you look at Astro starting as a static site generator and Next.js starting with doing a lot more, they both have features to add. And I just see Astro continuing to grow to support the things it doesn't have in a really, really nice way, to the point where I don't think Astro is really far away from being super competitive for a lot of different types of not just websites, but web apps that you could build.
Yeah, I feel like Astro feels like Next.js without all the cruft. You know what I mean? Without all the buy-in. And you can slim it down for the more chill use cases, or you can beef it up for the bigger apps.
Yep.
I really liked it. That was my first time writing in it, and I was like, damn, this is nice.
It's pretty sweet. And again, this is like writing server-side stuff for a framework that's not... Not that it's not made for it, but it's not optimized for that in terms of functionality. Like, they have a ton of niceties for doing static site generators and working with Markdown. Tons of really, really nice stuff that is like, this is what a framework should do for its specific use case. So it's not directly targeted at building full stack app, but it absolutely can. And especially like saying you had a good experience doing that when that's not its primary goal is pretty impressive.
Yeah, but like, lo and behold, here they go releasing a client-side router, you know? So like, I don't know what's up. Like, it must be getting so much easier to do this kind of stuff in frameworks. Everybody has file-based routing. Everybody has, you know, both server-side rendered and client-side rendered. Everybody has, you know, server actions, loaders, like all these patterns. And it seems like they're just cranking this stuff out without even breaking a sweat.
I feel that way, especially about Astro.
Yeah.
Because I think like Next.js has gone through iterations that are doing similar things. And this is not to diminish the work that they're doing, but what Next.js is doing is getting really, really fine-tuned with those. So it's had the ability to do static stuff and server stuff for a long time now. And so this new apps directory and new structure and server components, in a lot of ways, it doesn't enable at surface level that much different of functionality than they already have, because they already could do a bunch of stuff on the server. They already could do a bunch of stuff statically. Now there's very intricate details as to why this is important and why the work that they're doing is amazing. So don't let me like sound like I'm diminishing that. But Astro is knocking out these like major features to get to like missing chunks of functionality, I feel like, really quickly. And then they'll go down, and Tom Preston Warner has talked about this, and it's exactly how I felt about the evolution of web development, but I haven't been able to articulate it this way. We kind of have come full circle, and you'll see a lot of people say that, like, we used to do stuff on the server, then we didn't, and now we are like JavaScript stupid because we spent all this time to figure out that what we were doing was better. But what we actually are doing is not just going around in like a 2D plane in a circle. We're like evolving as we do that. So it's this cone, I guess, where you're continuing to like figure out what works while incorporating modern best practices and features to get to the point where you may be using at surface level what you had been using before, but the intricate details of how and why and the performance and DevX implications are getting better and better as we do it.
You know, there's an analog to like our content creation conversation earlier. All these libraries and frameworks are just doing the same thing that we've always done, but with a modern take on what powers them. So it makes it faster, easier, nicer, all that.
Yeah. Bienvenidos a Sebastian. Hola, buenas tardes. How to throw in. Oh, you could do it too.
Yeah.
You could. This is your time to shine.
Hola, Sebastian.
Yeah, that topic, I think, obviously gets me like pretty excited of where we are, and obviously Astro is a big part of that. So let me make sure. We got a few people greeting Corey Weathers, who joined on Twitch. So Corey is a teammate of Jess, my wife, at All0. She's going to Chicago next week, and I think they thought that I was coming and we were bringing the baby, and we're not. So I'm going to stay home, and Jess is going. And I think they were disappointed, not because I'm not coming, I'm sure, but because they don't get to meet the baby, which is sad. So I apologize for that. But I will be at home with Jamie next week while Jess is gallivanting around Chicago with her team. Kyla joined also on YouTube, checked in. Kyla, I haven't talked to you in a long time. It's very good to see you at least for a minute on stream. So thanks for hanging out. Corey said he didn't tell them that I wasn't coming with Jamie, but some people on the team already know, and we've already gotten flack for it. And so comment, let's see, I haven't read the whole thing, so I'm hoping there's something there. I am a Vue dev. However, I love some of the libraries that React community has. Example, charting libraries built on D3 or Framer. These are not available in Vue. I am building a web app considering Astro ? Maybe one of the reasons you're considering Astro is because you can use React as well as other frameworks, including Vue and Svelte and Lit and a few others. You can use those inside of Astro, which is, again, a very unique selling point for Astro. Maybe you're considering using React inside of Astro to take advantage of those libraries. One thing I don't have a ton of experience with is like building something bigger that are more than just like individual React components. Is how does Astro work to support bigger use cases with other frameworks embedded in it, like React? And I think about like, how do you share state? I really don't know the answer to that. And do all the packages work embedded into Astro? I actually don't know the answer to that either. So if the question is like, should I consider using Astro because I can use React inside of it to take advantage of those packages? I'm not exactly sure, to be honest. I would think those packages specifically would work, but I don't actually know.
If you're, well, and I'm not sure if the question is also just asking like, what's a good framework agnostic charting library? But I've got an answer for that if that is the question. You're right. A lot of them are tied to frameworks, but they don't have to be, right? This library from Observable is really, really good. Observable HQ plot. It's a JavaScript library, so it's not a React library. It's not a Vue library or anything like that. And it is built on top of D3, which I also thought D3, like D3 is available as well.
It's not specific, right, to React?
Yeah, it's not, but it's a big learning curve from what I understand. But yeah, there's lots of charting libraries that aren't tied to just React. And for that kind of stuff, I wouldn't look for a framework specific library. It typically doesn't make sense to do that, to tie that to your framework.
Sweet. We have, let's see, which one is this? Barat says, reading documentation, can't understand why I should pay attention, especially some sites are terrible. Can you make a video explaining tricks or general rules of document reading? And maybe, so I guess you're asking like, what are tricks for consuming documentation? Do you understand it that way, Brad?
Yeah. I've got a take there. If you find that the website is hard to navigate, hard to understand, hard to find what you're looking for,
that's their
go to ChatGPT.
Oh yeah, that too.
Like I've actually used that for a lot of stuff lately, and I'm like, I'm writing Next.js, tell me how to do X, Y, and Z, and ChatGPT does a really good job of like answering your question. That way you don't feel like you have to, scrounge through the docs if they kind of suck.
Yeah. I think
this is only going to get better when they can apply language models to, like, every site is like applying a language model to their set of data. So then you can ask an AI and its whole worldview is like only that.
Yes, that is so cool. So a couple of examples of this. Astro Houston AI. Astro has this. And to your point, exactly what they do is basically kind of ingest all of their docs and then build an AI around that, which has just become easier and easier. And I don't understand all the technical details. And I gave a keynote talk at that conference in Wisconsin about AI. And part of my thing was like, I feel weird because I don't know anything about AI, like technical details. I'm not that guy. Like, that's not what this talk is. The talk is like, as a regular developer, or like less than a regular average developer, like I am using AI because I don't have to know all those details. So it's one of the coolest things that I've seen. I'll give a quick shout out again to the platform Video Tap that I mentioned. So one of the things that Chris is working on, I hope I'm allowed to share this, but one of his goals is to kind of give you the ability to organize videos into a collection, maybe. And because what Video Tap does is it does a transcription of all of those, you can take either the transcription of each individual video or maybe the overview of each individual video, probably the raw transcription, and throw that into some sort of exact concept where you can build AI around that. So his example to me was, imagine someone that's a fan of your YouTube channel can go to an AI and say, what was the video where James talked about this?
Yeah.
Like, how I'm so excited for everything that he's doing, because he is like, and the people that he's working with, he is so good at building products. It's only going to get better and better. And it's such a like very specific, really, really interesting use case.
Syntax has done exactly this. So like with their site redesign, Wes has made transcripts of every single episode, uploaded that to a language model, and then they're going to be like putting a bot on their site where you can just ask it questions. So good.
It is. And it's also so helpful from consuming documentation. Now, the other thing I will say, and I kind of mentioned at the beginning of this, a potential title of developer experience consultant. Tejas, from who is now on his own, calls himself a developer. I think it's developer experience consultant. And I do some similar things. And I've thought about the reason I haven't used that as a title for myself is there's also like the bigger part of what I do is the content creation. So I just don't know like what's the appropriate title for me. But one of the things that I want to continue to do more of is that developer experience consulting. And one of the things I will say in response to like questioning your ability to understand documentation is also flipping it and saying that there's an opportunity for companies to make much better documentation. And I feel like this is missing a lot, where you go to a product and you do a hello world, and hopefully that's easy. But then you go beyond hello world and they don't have any support, like easily findable support. And the way I think about this is like, if someone is using your product to do hello world, what are the next 5 to 10 things that they're going to want to do? They're probably pretty consistent, right? Like those next, I want to do this. I want to incorporate this. I want to use environment variables. I want to receive post body and like parse post body if I'm doing a serverless function. Those things are not that unique for what people are looking for. Like think about what are those 5 to 10 next very specific use cases and make sure that those things are covered in the documentation. So part of the answer, I think, is to always question, should/can they be doing this documentation better? And you could potentially provide that feedback as you become more comfortable with yourself to say like, hey, company, I tried using this, struggled to find this. It would be really great if you had a link to this specific documentation or whatever it is.
Yeah. I feel like every framework should pretty much have like the equivalent of like the Remix Jokes app. It's an example app. It's a tutorial that walks you through authentication, saving to a database, even hosting this thing. Like that's what everybody's going to want to do. Some random CRUD app. And you should walk everybody through that.
100%. Question from Celestino. I'm a newbie at programming. I've heard it's important to contribute to open source. Can I start when everything I know so far is HTML, CSS, and JavaScript? I'm going to give a slightly controversial answer. I think sometimes we overhype encouraging people to do open source. And I don't say that from a perspective of I don't think it's valuable, because I 100% think it could be extremely valuable. I think we still just don't do a good enough job as an ecosystem of supporting people in that position that are getting started. Because I think back to myself, there was like one thing I wanted to submit like my profile to something, and they did it through PRs. I had never done a PR before, and I learned that, but I had never done it, and I had to like figure it out. But I think it's just harder than we think it is right now in the ecosystem as a whole. Now, to caveat that, there are specific things that are targeted towards that. And one of them is open sourced.
I got you. I had that ready.
Thank you. Sweet. Thank you. I'm a big fan of Brian. A good friend of mine, Becca, works for Open Sauce. They're amazing. Part of like their target is to make that process easier and easier for people. And I know Eddie Jowd, he runs the Eddie Hub. Let me see if I can grab his Twitter. He's a very big advocate of not just an advocate, but also of getting people involved. So I'll share a link to his Twitter as well. But my first take is I don't think open source is as accessible for people to get started as true beginners as sometimes we portray it to be.
I want to echo that. Like, for as much as people say contributing to open source is important, you know, because it's kind of like giving back, right? And that's always a good thing to do. But you can give back in so many different ways. You can suggest, like leave feedback if somebody's website has like a feedback button. That's a way to give back. If you want to open an issue, saying I think the docs could be better here, or just any feedback you have is a good way to give back. Even if you can't contribute code, but also like nobody's ever really looked at my open source contributions and been like, you're a good developer, even though that's what I want them to say. Like, I've got hundreds of GitHub repos and like tons of projects. No company has ever looked at that and said, good for you, you're hired. They're like, I literally don't care, do this algorithm for me.
Yeah.
And that's seriously frustrating when you have such a repertoire of work out there. So all that to be said is like, I think it's overhyped and like nobody actually cares. It's just like a buzzword almost.
And I'll like, we'll go back and forth and potentially push back on each other. So I do think there's a different perspective with someone with your experience level than someone that's a beginner. So because you have professional work experience, your open source contribution is not as necessary to validate who you are. So I think there's a little bit of a different perspective for someone that's coming in fresh because they don't have things to point to. So I think it could be more valuable there. I think it also depends on what kind of company you're interviewing for, because a lot of companies don't know or care anything in particular about open source. Like I think we confuse or forget sometimes that the people like myself, like you, that are active on social media are not the majority of what hiring managers and teams look like. Yeah. Like our insights into the community are not what the typical one is, I would say. The other thing I'll mention is open source also doesn't mean that you have to contribute to someone else's project. I think a great way to get open source and hands-on experience is to build a project with a friend. So just going through that process of getting into the habit of doing PRs and having someone else approve it and having that record and having that project that you can link off to and show that you contributed to and a tangible thing linked to a deployed app that you can send people to, I think that is extremely valuable and not near as intimidating as trying to branch into something that you've never done or seen or experienced before. Now, that said, again, I do want to go back to, I think it's harder than we often communicate, but if you were to get into a position where you're able to learn about a project, to work with and alongside real world developers, to go through PR and code reviews with real developers on real projects and get tied into that community, that is everything experience wise that people promise. I think just getting to that point is harder.
That's like one of those few and far betweens. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like that's like having a dad that runs a law firm and you're there like helping out, and and like that's how you got all your experience. Like that is so difficult to get involved that way. Programming truly has to be like your true passion, your true hobby, what you really love to do in order to reach, I feel like, that level of involvement so early on.
No.
But I'll take that one and run with it though, about saying make your own repos, open source them, and publish stuff to NPM. It can be as complex or as simple as you want it to be. And then you learn that process. And like guess what? I made this repo. It's a little React component called Use Countdown. It's got like hundreds of thousands of downloads, and
does it really
blowing my mind? Yeah.
Oh, well, I've used that one in when I had my another project I copied from you was my stream overlays website. Use that as well. That's crazy.
Yeah, it's wild, the amount. And like then people like use it and then they like write issues, and like next thing you know, you're like kind of a maintainer because people like what you're doing.
Yeah. That's so cool. And I think like you've already kind of mentioned it, I'll double down in support of you. Like Brad is the perfect example of taking those things and publishing them, regardless of if they get 1,000 or thousands or hundreds of thousands of downloads or whatever. You have gone through the process of deploying something and having a product out there. And that was my big thing coming out of college, was I had created a Harry Potter trivia app. That's what I wanted to do. And I just wrote shitty code to do it, but it was published to the store. And in any interview I had, I could point to that thing and say, this is something that I built that you can actually go and work with. So another huge recommendation going into interviews and kind of talking about things you've built is have something deployed either to an app store or just the website, but make sure that thing is deployed for other people to actually see and know that it's real.
Yeah. For as unselfish as open source seems to be, pretty much everything I've done in open source is kind of in a selfish mindset of like, I just want to publish this stuff so I can have something to point at so that I can reuse my own code, whatever. it's just like you are sharing it, and I think that's what's making it open source. That's making it good.
Mm-hmm. Amazing. There was another question, and we're getting close to the time to wrap up. This is a fun one. Like, I think it's almost like a clickbait one. Not that I'm saying that you're asking this from a clickbait perspective, but it's like a clickbaity topic right now, saying that AI has become scary for new developers. Do you think learning to code at this time is worth it? We can elaborate on this. We can talk about this. 100% learning to code is worth it right now. There's nothing about what AI is doing that makes me think that learning to code is not worth it. What I will say is things are going to evolve because of AI as a developer in the same way that things have continued to evolve as a developer over the course of time. Every new tool, every new product, every new feature, every new abstraction is another step in developers having less to do, which means they can focus more on doing other things. So I don't think developer jobs go away. Do they change like in what you do day to day? Yes. Having a foundation in programming now is 100% worth it in my mind.
Yeah, like do Ford factories still have people in them now that robots are invented? Yes, it changes the nature of work. It's going to free us up to stop thinking about how do I write this stupid regex, and I'm going to be able to move on and like accomplish the next feature in the application rather than dealing with the nuts and bolts of getting it done.
So in research for this AI keynote that I gave, I think it's Levin's theory. Rats, I forget what it is. It's either Levin's or Devins or something similar. And the idea is really interesting. It's actually neither one of those because I searched.
Lewin's.
Lewin's? How do you spell that?
Wait, no.
I don't think that's
the conservation model of nursing. That is not it.
No, that's not it. It's not about nursing. Although nursing is one of my favorite. No, it's not. So the idea is most people fear if AI is able to do more of our job for us, then we will be less needed in the workforce. But here's the thing. If AI can do more of our job for us, instead of getting rid of less people to do the same amount of work, why don't we bring on more people to do more work? Which means like right now we have this limited, it's not Darwin's theory. We have this limited visibility of what we're capable of as a race, as a culture, as humankind. When we develop these tools, we don't stop working. Our horizon changes. What we think about as possibilities for things we can build is now bigger than it was before. So we don't stop working, we just build more. And I think that's much more of the impact of this than losing jobs.
Yep, definitely agree.
Max said, is it still possible to get freelance gigs and employers' attention if you have a good GitHub profile, been contributing to open source for the last 3 years, and now I got a job through that, I think is what you're saying? My opinion on it, I think sometimes it's overhyped from the perspective of it's harder to get to a valuable contribution on GitHub / open source than we play it out to be. Doesn't diminish the fact that can be a definitive difference between you and some other entry-level candidate getting a job. So there's absolutely impact in having that. I just think it's a little harder to get to the point of that tangible impact than we make it out to seem at times.
Yeah, and also like nobody's just going to be perusing GitHub and find your profile and be like, damn, I'm going to hire that guy. Like it's just ammo to build your case, to build your portfolio, to increase your reputation. So use it for sure.
Yeah.
But that alone, I don't think will ever get you a job.
I'll add some additional context to what you just said, and I'll give a great example. If I can find her profile. Rats, I forget her last name. You may be able to help me.
Oh, dude, I think I know who you're talking about.
Catherine?
The one who made the README thing?
Yes.
Yeah,
What's her?
I know. Yeah, I know. That was wild. That was so good.
Okay, so let's start with, I'll share a link to the product. So this product that I'll give a little backstory to is readme.so, and it's a tool to be able to like have a drag and drop interface for building README files. And Catherine, I am so sorry I'm forgetting her last name. She's actually been on the podcast as well.
Olsner, I think is how you pronounce it.
That sounds right. Yeah. So what she did was build a product, but more importantly, what she did is she talked about it consistently. So to your point, Brad, if you're building something and it's on GitHub, people aren't just looking to see who the next good developer is by looking at random repos and reading through all the code, right? What they're doing. So what?
Show this tweet that I just linked, because this is like literally.
Can you send it to me in private chat? Ironically, it's like hard for me to pull it to copy it from where you just sent it. So let me get this up and I'll show it to everybody. So this is the README SO project, and it says the easiest way to create a README. Great. Like it's a great product. It's not that complicated. Like it's great at what it does, but it's not like a lot of us couldn't build something similar. Not to diminish her product. It's just, this is things that we are capable of as intermediate developers. And this tweet is like how it started.
Perfect. Yeah.
Versus,
like the epitome of the whole thing. Like
how it started versus how it's going. She built this thing. GitHub obviously is known for README files, and GitHub retweeted, try out this handy tool from Catherine Codes on Twitter to help create and customize your project's README. Great. Like that's super cool. She retweeted that saying, GitHub tweeted my project. So cool. Thank you. Amazing. That's a cool story by itself. What happens then is the next step is she got an offer, or she accepted an offer to work at GitHub from that project that she created. So the question of like, how much impact does open source have on your ability to find job opportunities? If it's just something that you can list on your resume that still has value, you don't expect people to just find it because it's out there. But if you can build a brand, not necessarily a brand from like an intimidating way, but if you stay consistent about sharing what you're building, this is the potential where people share, people find it and they share and they talk about it to the point where the people that you actually care about finding that, which is hiring managers and companies, they might see that. And now that's a validator, because not only is it something you built, it's something they see the process of you building, and they see other people responding to that as well, with that being the validator. And so, yes, that's such a cool story. I've been such a big fan of her for being the exact example of what this kind of stuff, the impact that it can have on your career.
Yeah. And I think some projects can be way more effective at getting you in the door than others. Like, for instance, if you have projects that directly relate to companies or to products, like if you're building extensions and that extension happens to be really good and really popular, that's how you get offers. I think of like Raycast. Like if you make some really good Raycast extensions, guess what? The team's probably going to reach out to you. If you make SDKs for APIs that don't have SDKs, and then you like tag the company in a bunch of tweets saying like, I'm implementing this SDK and this, can you help me with this documentation bit? And next thing you know, they're just going to be like, oh, we're going to hire you because we need that anyways.
And you have the potential to like be acquired for that too. Not that like, too. We're not like, these are things that can happen. We can't sit here and say like, build a thing, you'll get acquired. Like that's not how it works. The fact that like Catherine's story is a long shot, right? Like that doesn't happen very often, but there's this definition of luck, or the idea of luck. And people look at luck as just abstract and being lucky. And there's a definition of luck where luck is the combination of preparation and opportunity. And by sharing the things that you do on a consistent basis, you're increasing your chance of luck. You're increasing your chance of someone seeing what you're building, using it, and sharing it with something else the more you talk about it. So you have the ability to control your luck by increasing your potential for luck, by being prepared for opportunities when they come, and creating opportunities by continuing to share the stuff that you work on.
Yeah. And don't be shy about it. I know it seems like it's braggy when you talk about the stuff that you do, but at the end of the day, like if you don't, then nobody will know. So, and like, I think I want to hear about what other devs are doing. Like, I think it's cool.
Yep. Absolutely. Tech Life Journal had a couple of comments about AI. So it's cheaper to train human than AI running on big servers. That conversation probably starts to change though. It also is really interesting. Like the brain is basically like a computer, like it's zeros and ones. And it's crazy to me that the brain is still more powerful than any computer we've ever generated. Right? Like it can, computers can do generation, like they can do things that we can't do, but it also unequivocally can't do the majority of things that we do in life, like making decisions based on everything we see. And I don't know, it is really fascinating to me.
Thinking about that AI comment, I almost beg to differ. Like, I think AI is going to be really effective on small, constrained data sets, like we talked about somebody's podcast transcripts or somebody's documentation or website. And I feel like because the data set's so limited, it can't take that long to train it, as opposed to something like a general purpose AI like ChatGPT. Yes, takes friggin' forever and a bunch of horsepower to do. But I think all these smaller ones can get trained up pretty dang quickly, and can provide better value at the end of the day.
That's true. I think that's a good point of like, we're proving out the use case at scale to then niche back down.
Isn't that funny? Usually it's the other way around.
Right.
Like usually you start small.
But it's such a daunting task to build something at scale with AI that is that good. And don't get me wrong, like to your point earlier, like I use ChatGPT all the time and it blows my mind every time. But it also, like in my talk I gave, I kind of talked about, if AI was perfect, it would be all the things that we fear. It would be iRobot. Like we literally would get taken over, right? If AI was perfect. But it's not. Like, and it's far from it. It's very, very good. It can do so many things, but it is far from what we fear it will be. And it may be someday. Like maybe, I don't know what the future holds, but right now it's just very far from that. So it's a very useful tool. It is still just a tool, like a lot of other things. For developers, it becomes an abstraction, just like a lot of other things that have changed the way that we write code. So I'm optimistic. I see that as a plus. I see the tool as being enablers for us to not have to do the things that we don't want to do and focus on the stuff that like we have to do, or that AI can't do that we get to do to really take our products to the next level. So cool. I am going, UT is University of Texas at Austin. If you're from Texas, UT is also University of Tennessee at Knoxville. If you're in Tennessee, both orange.
Like pretty
Texas
much almost the same.
Burnt orange, and UT is a little less burnt, I guess. But
we just bought some tickets for a football game on day after Thanksgiving. So it's UT against Texas Tech. It's going to be a good one.
Yeah. We so Vanderbilt Tennessee game, which is a big rivalry in Tennessee. It's always the Friday or Saturday after Thanksgiving. So we went to a couple of those. They were super fun. Cool. We are on the way to the bank to finalize some details for our house that we're moving into in a couple of weeks. So I need to run. This has been super fun. Brad, always. I feel like we should do more of these because I just really enjoy the casual chat and have a Q&A type thing. So I'm glad you're around to do this. I'm glad everyone in the chat was around to ask questions and give comments and stuff. We really appreciate it. It makes this a ton of fun for us to do. I don't know if you're listening to the podcast version, leave a rating or review, help other people find the podcast so we can continue to do this because we really enjoy it. And the majority of the stuff we do is with guests. So that enables us to continue to bring on additional guests to help us create amazing content. In the meantime, that's all we got. So official end of podcast. We'll be able to clip that and stuff later. I do really like these. I listen to a lot of podcasts where I really just like listening to people talk. Like you find personalities that you kind of vibe with. And they don't have to have an agenda, like just hearing them. Like, and I don't know, are we that good personality? Like, I don't know if we are or not, but like, I don't know. I enjoy listening to those sometimes.
Yeah, like my favorites are a Shop Talk show where they literally never talk about anything specific.
They're just,
And my favorite episodes of Syntax are the ones where they do potluck questions.
Yeah,
just because it's like more free flowing, and typically if I want to learn something, I'll just go to the docs or like figure it out that way. So,
speaking of that, we have talked about this for a long time and we just haven't done it. I don't know if we have the form or not, but at one point we started to have a form for people to submit grab bag questions. And so we have the ability to kind of make sure that's up and running and then get people to submit and kind of bring those to an episode as well. I guess we should just call these grab bag.
Totally.
Also, and then in the title, just include some of the topics. So text that I came here to listen Native Americans, but I liked your talks now.
Yeah.
Not sure.
I don't know how you found this channel based on that search.
Yeah, are you saying, I wonder if they're saying Native Americans as in people
From
indigenous
America.
people, or are they saying native English speakers? Maybe. Yeah, I'm not sure.
We'll get into Spanish here soon, dude. I'm telling you,
Yes.
this year, like, I spoke with a painter that came to my house in
Oh, that's
Spanish.
awesome.
I'm
Yeah.
like getting way more comfortable with my in-laws. Things are flowing way better.
Yes.
So yeah,
I love it. That gets me excited, and I'll get to see your wife in January as well.
that's right. Yep.
We'll get to do that. Oh, and somebody just joined from France, which I'm still doing. It's very passive because I'm kind of doing the bare minimum, but still going strong on the streak for French, which is a ton of fun.
I refuse to leave the Diamond League. So like that's my minimum. It's like,
so you're being like really
I do
competitive.
enough lessons to stay in Diamond League. Yeah.
Okay. That's cool. Yeah. I'm completely dropped out of basically everything.
It was hard to get there. So I'm like, I'm not like, it's easy to stay, but hard to get there.
Yep. Also the last thing I'll say, I probably said that an hour ago, is we are planning a crossover episode with Front End Happy Hour. And I don't even know that you specifically, well, I guess I mentioned that in our chat.
Yep.
So that'll come up in probably a month or so, and we'll kind of promote that. But we'll have our friends on from there, Ryan Burgess specifically being the one that's going to join us, and I think Jim is going to join as well. So it's going to be super cool.
I don't know if you know this, but Stacy works with me. Stacy London.
Oh, what? Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
So like if she wants to be on that episode, that'd be super cool too.
Oh, you should. Can you send her a message?
Yeah, I will.
And just coordinate.
Yeah.
Or just start that conversation, because that would be fantastic.
Yeah.
Sweet. Okay. I actually, Jess has already sent me at least one text to remind me that I need to get off. So thanks everyone. Brad, great to see you as always. Fun to hang out. We will see you all next week.